The starlight danced off Zix 427's crystalline surface as they moved through the brightly lit laboratory of the International Space Research Center. Their transparent body cast rainbow patterns across the white walls, a sight that still amazed the human scientists even after 3 months of their stay on Earth. It was nearly midnight, and most of the staff had gone home. Only Dr. Sarah Chen remained, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun as she studied data on her tablet. She looked up and smiled as Zix 427 approached her workstation. "Still working late, Sarah?" Zix 427's voice had a musical quality, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Just trying to understand these energy readings from your last scan," Sarah replied, rubbing her tired eyes. "They're unlike anything we've ever seen before." Zix 427 moved closer, their crystalline form shifting slightly to better see the screen. In the 3 months since the crystalline delegation had arrived on Earth, they had found humans endlessly fascinating. While their own species had evolved beyond the need for sleep or food, reproducing only once every 1,000 years, through pure energy transfer, humans seemed to be in constant motion, eating, sleeping, working, laughing. "Your species is quite remarkable," Zix 427 said, settling into what humans called a sitting position beside Sarah. "You require rest every day, yet you often ignore this need in pursuit of knowledge." Sarah laughed, a sound that sent pleasant vibrations through Zix 427's crystalline structure. "That's what coffee is for," she said, holding up her half-empty cup. "But you're right. I should probably head home soon." "Before you go," Zix 427 hesitated, something unusual for their normally direct species, "would you tell me more about human relationships? We've studied your biology, your technology, but there's something about your connections with each other that we still don't quite understand." Sarah set down her tablet, turning to face the crystalline being. "What would you like to know? You form bonds that seem to defy logic. You stay with sick partners even when it doesn't benefit you. You raise children that aren't your own. You sacrifice your own well-being for others. Why?" Sarah thought for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "Love isn't about logic. It's about connection, about finding someone who makes you feel complete, even if you didn't know you were incomplete before." As she spoke, Zix 427 noticed their own crystalline structure beginning to resonate at a frequency they had never experienced before. The lab lights seemed to bend differently through their body, creating new patterns on the walls. "Would you show me?" Zix 427 asked softly. "How humans share these connections?" Sarah's eyes widened slightly. "Are you sure? Our species are so different. Perhaps that's what makes it interesting," Zix 427 replied, their form glowing slightly brighter. Sarah reached out slowly, placing her hand against Zix 427's crystalline surface. The touch sent unexpected waves of energy through both of them. Where their forms met, there was a soft blue glow. "This is how we share energy in our most intimate moments," Zix 427 explained, their voice vibrating with new frequencies. Neither of them noticed the unusual patterns forming where their energies merged, too caught up in the moment of discovery and connection. The lab's instruments recorded sudden spikes in various readings, but in their shared moment of wonder, such details seemed unimportant. As the night deepened, two beings from vastly different worlds shared something unprecedented, a connection that would soon prove to have consequences beyond anything either species had imagined. Little did they know, in that quiet lab on a normal Earth night, they had just started a chain of events that would change the understanding of life itself across 2 galaxies. 2 weeks had passed since that night in the laboratory. Zix 427 stood before the large mirror in their private quarters at the Crystalline Embassy, studying their reflection with growing concern. Something was different. Their usually clear crystal structure now showed swirling patterns of blue and purple light, moving like clouds in a storm. More worrying were the sudden pulses of energy that would surge through their body at random moments, making their form glow so brightly that other crystallines would stop and stare. Most unusual, said medical expert Kix 891, floating around Zix 427 with scanning devices. In all my 1,000 years of practice, I have never seen such symptoms in our kind. Another wave of energy pulsed through Zix 427's body, making the lights in the room flicker. They watched as small sparkles, like tiny stars, appeared and disappeared within their crystalline form. Could it be some Earth disease? Zix 427 asked, their musical voice hitting notes it never had before. Impossible, Kex 891 replied firmly. Our crystalline structure cannot be infected by organic diseases. But these readings, the medical expert's own form dimmed slightly in confusion. They suggest your energy patterns are changing, growing, somehow. Zix 427 fought back to that night with Sarah, remembering the strange blue glow where their energies had merged. They had meant to tell someone about it, but somehow it had seemed too private, too special to share. Just then, their communication crystal chimed. It was First Ambassador Rix 001, the leader of their diplomatic mission to Earth. Zix 427, your presence is required in the main hall immediately. The ambassador's voice rang with authority. The High Council is demanding answers about your condition. In the main hall, dozens of crystalline beings floated in a circle, their forms casting rainbow lights across the white walls. At the center, a large hologram showed the faces of the High Council members back on their home world. This is unprecedented, one council member's voice boomed through the hall. Our species reproduces only once every 1,000 years, through carefully controlled energy transfer ceremonies. What you describe is impossible. Another pulse ran through Zix 427's body, stronger this time. Several nearby crystallines moved back in alarm as the surge affected their own energy fields. Impossible or not, Zix 427 said, their voice steady despite their fear. It is happening. My energy patterns are changing in ways we've never seen before. The council members' forms flickered with agitation. You must tell us everything. What exactly happened 2 weeks ago? Zix 427 hesitated. They hadn't wanted to reveal their intimate moment with Sarah, but now it seemed they had no choice. As they began to explain, another crystalline burst into the hall. Urgent news from the human scientists. The messenger announced. They say they've detected unusual energy signatures from their lab records of that night. Something about hybrid energy patterns. The hall erupted in musical tones of shock and confusion. Hybrid energy patterns were theoretical at best, mentioned only in ancient texts about the evolution of their species. Zix 427 felt another wave of energy pulse through them, but this time it was different. For just a moment, they thought they felt another consciousness brush against their own. Something new, something that was neither fully crystalline nor fully human. Zix 427's voice trembled with realization. I think I need to speak with Dr. Sarah Chen immediately. The High Council members' holograms flickered intensely. This discussion is not over, they declared. If what we suspect is true, you may have just changed the course of evolution for both our species. As Zix 427 hurried out of the hall, they couldn't help but notice that the swirling patterns inside their crystal form had begun to pulse in time with what felt remarkably like a heartbeat. The International Space Research Center was buzzing with activity when Zix 427 arrived. News of their condition had spread quickly, and scientists from all over the world had gathered to witness what might be the first ever human crystalline hybrid formation. Dr. Sarah Chen paced nervously in her lab, her usual neat appearance slightly disheveled from hours of non-stop work. When she saw Zix 427 enter, their crystalline form now swirling with beautiful patterns of light, she gasped. You're glowing, she said softly. It's beautiful. Another wave of energy pulsed through Zix 427, making all the electronic devices in the lab flicker. Sarah, I think we created something that night. Dr. Rodriguez, the head of xenobiology, rushed forward with a scanner. These readings are incredible. The energy patterns within your crystalline structure show signs of both crystalline and human DNA frequencies. But that's impossible, Sarah said, looking at the readings. Our species are completely different. We're carbon-based life forms, while the crystallines are pure energy within crystal matrices. Zix 427 moved to the center of the lab where a large scanning chamber had been set up. As they entered it, dozens of screens lit up with data. The swirling patterns within their form seemed to dance faster, as if responding to the attention. Not impossible, said Dr. Rodriguez, his eyes wide with excitement as he studied the screens. Look at this. Human DNA has an amazing ability to adapt and combine with other genetic materials. And the crystalline energy matrix, it's actually forming something like a DNA spiral. Sarah moved closer to the chamber, placing her hand against its clear surface. Are you saying that somehow our genetic material found a way to combine with crystalline energy patterns? Just then, something extraordinary happened. Where Sarah's hand touched the chamber, the swirling lights inside Zix 427's form moved toward her, creating a pattern that looked almost like a tiny hand reaching back. Oh my God, Sarah whispered. There's actually someone in there. Dr. Rodriguez quickly typed on his computer. According to these readings, Sarah's DNA contains a rare mutation that makes it uniquely compatible with crystalline energy patterns. That's why this has never happened before in all the times humans and crystallines have interacted. Zix 427's musical voice trembled with emotion. So it's true. We're having a child. Not exactly a child as either of our species would understand it, Dr. Rodriguez explained. It's more like a new form of life altogether. Part energy, part matter, with characteristics of both species. More scientists crowded around the screens, pointing excitedly at the data. Inside the chamber, Zix 427's form continued to pulse with waves of light, each one stronger than the last. The question is, Sarah said, still watching the swirling patterns that seemed to reach for her, what will it become? Nothing like this has ever existed before. Zix 427's voice chimed with a new note of wonder. Perhaps that's what makes it so special. It's not just a hybrid. It's proof that life can find new ways to exist, to evolve. The lab fell quiet as everyone watched the dancing lights within Zix 427's form. In that moment of silence, even those who had been skeptical could feel the weight of what was happening. They weren't just witnessing a medical oddity. They were watching the birth of an entirely new form of life. We need to contact both the Human World Council and the Crystalline High Council immediately, Dr. Rodriguez said finally. This changes everything we thought we knew about life itself. As if in response, another wave of energy pulsed through Zix 427, this time forming a pattern that looked remarkably like a double helix made of starlight. The news spread across Earth and the crystalline homeworld like wildfire. Within days, the peaceful halls of the Crystalline Embassy had become the center of an interplanetary storm. This is an outrage. The voice of High Council member Tix 755 boomed through the embassy's main hall. Their hologram flickered with angry pulses of red light. Our species has maintained pure energy patterns for millions of years. This contamination cannot be allowed to continue. Zix 427 stood in the center of the hall, their form glowing brighter than ever. The swirling patterns inside them now formed complex shapes that sometimes looked like DNA strands, sometimes like star systems. First Ambassador Rick 001 floated forward. With all due respect, Council member, the hybrid already exists. We cannot simply pretend it doesn't. On the other side of the hall, human diplomats from the World Council watched with concern. Dr. Sarah Chen stood among them, her hands clenched tightly together. The human government demands protection for both ZX-427 and the developing hybrid, announced World Council Representative Maria Torres. This is a scientific miracle that could benefit both our species. Another council member's hologram flared brightly. Benefit? This could destroy our entire way of life. What if others of our kind start wanting to reproduce with humans? Our careful energy transfer ceremonies, our population control, our pure crystalline forms, all could be lost. ZX-427 suddenly felt a strong pulse within them. The lights in the hall flickered, and everyone fell silent as a new pattern appeared in their crystal form. It looked like a small face, formed of starlight. "Look," Sarah stepped forward, pointing. "It's becoming more defined. It's aware." The human scientists' instruments beeped excitedly, recording the event. Even the angry council members' holograms dimmed slightly in surprise. "Fascinating," murmured Dr. Rodriguez, checking his readings. "The hybrid appears to be responding to the emotional energy in the room. It's already showing signs of both human empathy and crystalline energy manipulation." First Ambassador Rix 001's form pulsed with thoughtful blue light. "Perhaps instead of seeing this as a threat, we should see it as an opportunity. Our species has not evolved in millions of years. We thought we had reached perfection. But what if we were wrong?" "Evolution," scoffed one council member. "This isn't evolution. It's chaos." Just then, Sarah walked closer to ZX-427, ignoring the disapproving hums from both human and crystalline officials. As she approached, the patterns within ZX-427's form reached toward her again, creating beautiful swirls of light. "This isn't chaos," Sarah said firmly. "This is proof that life finds a way to grow, to change, to become something new. Isn't that what both our species have always searched for? New understanding, new possibilities." The room fell silent as everyone watched the interaction. The small face in ZX-427's form seemed to smile, sending ripples of golden light through the entire hall. First Ambassador Rix 001 turned to address both the human diplomats and the council holograms. "I propose we create a joint research team. Both human and crystalline scientists working together to understand this miracle. Perhaps then we can." But before they could finish, alarms started blaring throughout the embassy. Dr. Rodriguez rushed to check his instruments, his eyes widening. "The hybrid's energy patterns are accelerating," he shouted. "Something's happening." ZX-427's form began to pulse with blinding light, and Sarah rushed forward to help them. As human and crystalline officials argued about what to do, no one noticed the small face in ZX-427's form had started to laugh, a sound that somehow combined the musical tones of the crystallines with human joy. In a special laboratory built between the Crystalline Embassy and the Space Research Center, scientists from both species worked day and night to understand the miracle growing within ZX-427. The room buzzed with excitement as new discoveries were made every hour. "It's extraordinary," Dr. Rodriguez said, pointing to a holographic display. "The hybrid is using human DNA like a template, but filling it with crystalline energy instead of organic matter." Sarah sat next to ZX-427, who now glowed so brightly that special shields had to be installed around them. The swirling patterns inside their crystal form had become more complex, sometimes forming what looked like tiny galaxies. "How are you feeling?" Sarah asked softly, watching as another wave of light pulsed through her friend's form. "Different," ZX-427's musical voice chimed. "But not bad different. It feels like I'm carrying the universe inside me." Dr. Ming, a genetics expert, rushed over with new test results. "We've figured it out," she exclaimed, her eyes bright with excitement. "Sarah, your DNA has a mutation we've never seen before. It's on the same gene that helps human cells adapt to extreme environments." "What does that mean?" Sarah asked, leaning forward to look at the results. It means, Dr. Rodriguez explained, that your cells are incredibly good at changing and surviving. When they met Zix 427's energy pattern, instead of dying like normal cells would, they adapted. They learned to speak the language of crystal energy. Inside Zix 427's form, the small face appeared again, clearer than ever. It seemed to be watching everyone with curious eyes made of starlight. "Look at these readings," a crystalline scientist named Mix 219 chimed in. "The hybrid isn't just copying human DNA or crystalline patterns. It's creating something completely new. It's taking the best parts of both species." On the screens around them, data showed how human DNA's amazing ability to adapt had merged with crystalline energy's power to transform. The hybrid was learning to switch between energy and matter, just like changing clothes. "But why hasn't this happened before?" asked First Ambassador Rick 001, who had come to check on the progress. "Humans and crystallines have worked together for years." Dr. Ming smiled. "Because we needed exactly the right combination. Sarah's special DNA mutation, Zix 427's particularly flexible energy pattern, and most importantly, the emotional connection they shared. The hybrid isn't just a physical mixture of our species. It's born from understanding and accepting each other's differences." As if agreeing, the hybrid sent a wave of warm, golden light through Zix 427's form, making everyone in the room feel suddenly happy and peaceful. "It's already learning to communicate," Mix 219 observed with wonder. "Not with words or energy patterns, but with pure emotion. It's creating its own way of speaking." Sarah reached out to touch the shield around Zix 427, and the hybrid's light pattern reached back, forming what looked like a small hand made of stars. "This changes everything we thought we knew about life," Dr. Rodriguez said, shaking his head in amazement. "If human DNA can adapt to merge with crystal energy, what else might be possible? Could we learn to adapt to any form of life in the universe?" Zix 427's voice chimed with pride. "Perhaps that's why the universe brought our species together, not just to create something new, but to show us that life has no limits except the ones we put on ourselves." The hybrid sparkled in response, its face now clearly smiling. In that moment, everyone in the room understood they weren't just studying a scientific miracle. They were watching the future of both their species take shape, one sparkle of starlight at a time. The day of the birth began with a shower of light. Zix 427's entire form started pulsing with colors no one had ever seen before, sending waves of energy through the special chamber they had been moved to. "It's time," Dr. Rodriguez announced, his voice tight with excitement. "Everyone to your stations." The chamber was filled with both human and crystalline scientists, all watching with held breath. Sarah stood closest to Zix 427, her hand pressed against the protective shield that separated them. "I'm scared," Zix 427's musical voice trembled, hitting notes that made the air shimmer. "This has never happened before. What if something goes wrong?" "We're all here with you," Sarah assured them, as the room's lights flickered with another energy pulse. "Both our species together. We won't let anything bad happen." Inside Zix 427's crystal form, the baby's face had become crystal clear, a perfect blend of human features made of pure starlight. But now it was changing, shifting, like a star about to go supernova. "Energy levels are rising," called out Mix 219, their own crystal form vibrating with excitement. "The hybrid is preparing for independent existence." Suddenly, Zix 427's entire body lit up like a newborn sun. The light was so bright that even through the special shields, everyone had to cover their eyes. A high musical note filled the air, somehow combining the sound of a baby's first cry with the song of the stars themselves. "Look!" someone shouted. "It's happening." In the center of the blinding light, a small form began to take shape. At first, it looked like a human child made of pure crystal. Then, in the blink of an eye, it shifted into a pattern of pure energy. Back and forth it changed, as if trying out both forms, testing its new existence. Incredible, Dr. Ming whispered, checking her instruments. It can switch between physical form and pure energy at will. The light began to dim, and there, floating in the middle of the chamber, was something entirely new. A child-sized being that looked like a perfect mix of human and crystal, its form sometimes solid, sometimes pure light, its face both alien and familiar at the same time. The hybrid opened its eyes. They were like tiny galaxies, swirling with stars. It looked around the room curiously, then directly at Sarah and 6427. "Hello," it said, its voice somehow speaking in both human words and crystal songs at the same time. "I've been waiting to meet you properly." Tears ran down Sarah's face as she smiled. 6427's form pulsed with joy, creating rainbow patterns across the walls. Around them, both human and crystalline scientists watched in amazement as the hybrid floated gently down to stand between its parents. "What should we call you?" Sarah asked softly. The hybrid smiled, its form shifting slightly like starlight on water. "I am both, and neither," it said in its double voice. "I am something new. But you can call me Nova, because I am born from the meeting of two stars." First Ambassador Rick-001, who had been watching from the back of the room, floated forward. "Welcome, Nova," they chimed solemnly. "You are the first of your kind, a bridge between our species and perhaps a door to countless new possibilities." Nova reached out both hands, one touching Sarah's fingers through the shield, the other connecting with 6427's crystal form. Where they touched, gentle light spread like ripples in a pond, filling everyone in the room with a sense of peace and wonder. The universe, it seemed, had just become a much bigger place. 6 months after Nova's birth, the International Space Research Center had become the busiest place on Earth. Scientists and diplomats from across the galaxy came to meet the universe's first human crystalline hybrid. Nova grew quickly, but not like a normal human child or a crystalline being. Some days they appeared as a young human made of shifting crystal light, other days as a pure energy form with human features. They could speak all Earth languages and communicate in crystalline tones at the same time. "Watch this," Nova called out one morning, floating in the center of the main laboratory. Their form shimmered and suddenly split into two, one human-looking, one pure crystal, before merging back together. Sarah and 6427 watched proudly as their child demonstrated their unique abilities. Around them, scientists from 20 different alien species took notes and recordings. "The hybrid child shows us that human DNA can adapt to any form of life," announced Dr. Rodriguez to a group of visiting alien scientists. "Their ability to change between forms proves that humanity might be the key to bringing all species closer together." A tall tree-like alien stepped forward, their leaves rustling with excitement. "Our species has been stuck in the same form for millions of years. Could human DNA help us evolve too?" "That's exactly what we're studying now," Dr. Ming replied, showing them some test results. "Nova's existence proves that human genetic flexibility can work with any kind of life form. We've already started research projects with 5 different species." Nova floated over to a group of young alien children who had come with their scientist parents. As they played together, Nova kept shifting their form to make the other children laugh, sometimes looking like them, sometimes creating beautiful light shows. "They're a natural diplomat," First Ambassador Rick-001 observed, watching Nova play. "They understand all species instinctively." Sarah smiled as she watched her child. "It's because they're proof that differences don't have to divide us. They're living proof that we can all find ways to connect." Suddenly, Nova called out in excitement, "Mom, Parent 6, look what I discovered." They focused hard, and their form began to glow with new colors. Slowly, they created a small model of the galaxy made of light and crystal, showing how all the different species were connected. "Amazing. whispered a jellyfish-like alien floating in a water tank. The child can see patterns that even our oldest scientists missed. Zix 427's form pulsed with parental pride. Nova doesn't just see connections. They help create them. Every species they meet learns something new about themselves. The crystalline High Council, who had once been so afraid of Nova's existence, now watched through their holograms with interest. Perhaps, one council member admitted, change isn't always a bad thing. Nova has shown us that evolution can be beautiful. Later that evening, after all the visitors had left, Nova sat between their parents in the quiet lab. Their form glowed softly, creating peaceful patterns on the walls. "Are you happy, Nova?" Sarah asked, watching the stars through the lab's big windows. Nova smiled, their galaxy eyes twinkling. "I'm happy because I get to be something new. Every day, I learn more about what I can do, about how to help different species understand each other." Zix 427 chimed softly. "You've changed everything, little one. Not just for us, but for every species in the galaxy." Nova reached out, touching both their parents at once, sending waves of love through both human cells and crystal energy. "No," they said wisely, "humans changed everything. I'm just proof of what they can do, help life find new ways to grow, to change, to become more than it was before." Above them, through the lab's skylight, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if celebrating the new possibilities that had been born from one unexpected night of connection between two very different beings. 10 years had passed since that night in the laboratory when a human scientist and a crystalline being had created something unprecedented. The universe had never been the same since. Nova, now looking like a young teenager when they chose to appear human, stood before the United Galactic Council. Representatives from over 100 species filled the massive hall, their different forms creating a beautiful display of life's diversity across the cosmos. As your first hybrid ambassador, Nova's voice rang out in both human words and crystal songs. "I'm happy to report that the human-alien evolution program has succeeded beyond our dreams." Behind them, a giant screen showed images from across the galaxy. There were tree people who had evolved to survive in space, water beings who could now briefly exist on land, and even rock creatures who had developed new ways to communicate. Thanks to human DNA's amazing ability to adapt, Nova continued, shifting their form between crystal and human as they spoke. "We've helped 30 different species overcome their evolutionary challenges. But more importantly, we've brought everyone closer together." In the front row, Sarah and Zix 427 watched their child with pride. Sarah's hair had some gray now, but her eyes still sparkled with the same curiosity that had led to Nova's creation. Beside her, Zix 427's crystal form had developed new patterns shaped by years of sharing life with humans. "Remember when they were so afraid of what I might become?" Nova asked their parents later, as they walked through the council's garden together. Around them, beings from different species chatted and played together, their children running and floating past. "The crystalline High Council thought you would destroy their way of life," Zix 427 chimed softly. "Instead, you helped make it better." Sarah nodded, watching as Nova created small light shows for a group of young aliens. "You showed everyone that change doesn't mean losing who you are. It means becoming more than you were before." Nova smiled, their galaxy eyes twinkling. "And it all started with one question. Am I pregnant, humans?" They laughed, the sound making flowers bloom and crystals grow around them. Who knew that such a worried question would lead to all of this? First Ambassador Rix 001 floated over to them, their crystal form glowing warmly. "Thanks to you, Nova, that question has been asked many times since. Each new hybrid brings something special to our galaxy." It was true. Across the stars, more humans with the special DNA mutation had helped other species evolve and adapt. Each new hybrid was unique, carrying the best parts of both parent species. Some could breathe in space, others could talk to plants, and some could even see the future. But you were the first, Sarah said, hugging her child who shifted to solid form to hug her back. You showed us all what was possible. Nova looked up at the stars visible through the garden's clear dome. I think the universe knew what it was doing, they said thoughtfully. It knew that humans, with their special ability to adapt and change, were exactly what the galaxy needed. Every species had something amazing to offer, but humans had the gift of helping those amazing things grow and change. Zix 427 pulsed with happiness, and now, thanks to that one night in a laboratory, the whole universe is evolving together. As the stars twinkled above them, Nova created a small galaxy in their hands, showing all the different species living and growing together. In the crystal lights, they could see the future, endless possibilities of life finding new ways to change, to connect, and to become more than anyone had ever dreamed possible. And it had all started with a simple connection between two very different beings who weren't afraid to try something new.